This presentation is about affordable housing and what the Grand Rapids area may be able to achieve in the near future based on creative housing solutions that have already been put in place across the United States. So this presentation will cover the public housing agencies in the Grand Rapids area, which have been the government's traditional way of allotting families with money to afford housing, an overview of a few nonprofit housing agencies that provide funding and other creative solutions for diverse and affordable housing. We will look at what some agencies do in the Grand Rapids community, but not all of them, as a comprehensive overview because of the parameters of this presentation, wanting to focus on the growth of affordable housing through new initiatives that veer away from partnering with housing commissions. This is because the voucher system is already overloaded and wait lists are full. It will also focus on creative housing solutions that are being used across the United States. And lastly, we will move on to how is Grand Rapids encouraging the building and restoration of affordable housing, including creative solutions from 2 nonprofits, several approved recommendations by the City Commission, and a cooperative housing alliance. So let's get started. First, for public housing agencies in the Grand Rapids area, we go back. We have the Kent County Housing Commission, Grand Rapids Housing Commission, and Wyoming Housing Commission. So there are 3 in the Grand Rapids area, as I have stated. A public housing agency provides public assistance for housing. We will see this in the descriptions portion. So according to HUD, which is the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, public housing agencies provide public housing assistance to low-income individuals and families, the aging, and people with disabilities. So HUD funds housing agencies. HUD sets income limits based on the income of the community, and people may apply through their local housing agencies. So this is the more traditional outlook and how people normally think of affordable housing through the government. But this presentation is going to focus on other solutions. So moving forward, we're now moving on to affordable housing partners. So that's going to be our nonprofit housing partners. So nonprofit agencies in Grand Rapids that help individuals find and secure housing include ICCF, which stands for Inner City Christian Federation, Link Up, and Dwelling Place. These are places I wanted to highlight because they do work with the housing agencies for the voucher systems. So that is Section 8, where individuals pay 30 to 40% of their monthly income for rent, and the housing agency, which is funded through HUD, once again, pays the rest. Or these places also can provide project-based vouchers, which are where people live in a complex only for low income. So ICCF, their vision is vibrant communities in West Michigan with connected neighbors, housing justice, and abundant opportunity. And their mission is equitable opportunity, affordable homes, and thriving neighborhoods. So more info on them. They actually have 450 affordable housing units, but waiting lists are all closed. So although that sounds like a good number, and ICCF is definitely doing a lot for the Grand Rapids community, all of their apartments, so Steepleview Apartments, Stockbridge Apartments, 415 Franklin Apartments, and Emerald Flats all use project-based vouchers, but they're all currently full, so people can't apply to live there. Next, Link Up. Their mission is that they believe neighborhoods matter and that where you start contributes to where you go. They work to connect residents to resources by connecting who you know, what you know, where you live, and what you make. So Link Up partners with Dwelling Place, which is the next agency we'll talk about, to offer 8 vouchers at Garfield Park Lofts. So this is very helpful. 8 seems like a low number, but like I said, there is a crisis, not just in Grand Rapids, but in Grand Rapids as this presentation is talking about. So those 8 make a big difference for people. And sorry, I went backwards. Dwelling Place, lastly, we'll talk about their mission is Dwelling Place improves the lives of people by creating quality, affordable housing, providing essential support services, and serving as a catalyst for neighborhood revitalization. So they have about 26 properties in Grand Rapids, but unfortunately their shortest waiting list is about 3 months for a non-income based apartment. So this is a fixed rate between $724 and $865 a month. So this could be a disadvantage to folks who still can't afford to pay that amount, because instead of it being on a voucher system, it does have that fixed rent rate. So now for kind of the most entertaining part of this presentation, we will talk about creative housing solutions that have been already implemented across the United States. So I was able to find a lot of this information, actually all of this information I'm going to be introducing from the Stanford Social Innovation Review in their article titled Innovative Solutions for the Housing Crisis by Abby Ivory and Kent Colton. This was written in 2020, so fairly recent, but not the absolute newest. So they said that there are 6 solutions that they found from the research. So these included removing regulatory barriers, building faster to lower cost, creative finance solution, using existing houses and land, using community strengths, and assisting renters with finances. So jumping in, Symbium is a company based out of San Francisco, and they developed a computational law platform to determine if an accessory dwelling place is allowed to be built. So this is interesting because later in this presentation, we will talk more about accessory dwelling units, but they are secondary living spaces that share a lot with a primary residence. So this allows more people to live on a lot. So obviously that can decrease the cost of rent. So basically this online platform allows people to know what the zoning of their area is and where this is allowed, so that they can more easily find or build more affordable housing. So that's Symbium. Moving forward, another company is called Integra. They're also based in California, and they utilize offsite construction as an innovation to increase productivity and lower cost of building. So they are unique to the US market, and they use a fully integrated offsite solution. They call it a construction process, not a product. So their whole goal is to use this process that makes building housing more efficient and more cost effective in order to drive down like rental costs or upfront costs for the buyer. And this is a very interesting one. So Rhino is a low-cost insurance, which offers people to, instead of paying cash security deposits, they can actually buy insurance. So based in New York City, but licensed for all 50 states, landlords maintain the same or better protections than a cash deposit while lowering upfront costs for renters. This is really important because advantages include renters marketing their units as deposit-free, more qualified renters apply without barriers to renting, and renters can pay as low as $4 a month for this insurance, making the initial cost of renting an apartment much more affordable. And then, so we have co-living solutions. So this was the suggestion that using houses in land that already exist can drive down costs. So this is co-living. It allows individuals to pay lower rent prices per month. A company called Co-Living in San Francisco allows individuals to apply for housing in the city and provides them roommate matches. A company called Nesterly in Boston aims to help 2 communities find affordable housing, college students and the aging community. So Nesterly provides matches for students with seniors who already own houses in the area who need additional income. So Nesterly is actually like a super creative solution, because a lot of times like senior citizens need some extra income in their retirement years to keep their houses. And as we know, students a lot of times struggle with finances. So pairing these 2 groups who often both are in need of affordable housing is a great way to make use of existing resources. So next, we're going to talk about using community strengths. So Century Partners in Detroit creates green infrastructure by hiring neighborhood residents to perform rehabilitation work. The fact that they hire neighborhood residents helps steer away from gentrification in the area, because it allows for the people in the area to dictate their own needs. So that's really cool. Next, we'll talk about Rock USA. It's based in Concord, but it has a mission to lower the cost of living across all of the United States. So I have a video here that explains what is an ROC. It's a resident-owned community. So let's take a look at that. So before I take any credit for that video, I got that right from Rock USA's website. That's something that they put together to better explain what a resident-owned community is. So I hope you find that interesting and something that maybe could be an idea for the Grand Rapids area. So moving along once again, the final solution is to assist renters with their finances. So a company called ESU of New York City offers rental reporting to credit bureaus. This is really interesting because it boosts credit scores. It's important because a lot of times rent is an individual's most stable recurring payment and it is not traditionally part of a credit score. So it helps people actually show off like a good asset that they have going for them and something that they've actually worked towards making a consistent payment towards. And that's actually a good measure for the homeowners or the landlords, because if these people can prove that they've consistently paid their rent, that's what should really be taken into consideration. So now our final topic, what is the Grand Rapids area doing, or what have we already done? So here are some more creative solutions to the housing crisis in Grand Rapids and the closely surrounding areas. So first we'll talk about Partners in Housing. So Partners in Housing is Family Promises program to purchase and restore manufactured homes. And the family who then lives in that manufactured home only has to pay the lot rent. So Family Promise is a nonprofit in Grand Rapids, and this is their creative solution to affordable housing that I actually didn't see in other things that I looked up. So I find this to be very cool. So they say with the support of amazing volunteers, they're able to purchase and restore manufactured homes so they become affordable places that families can be proud of. So the family, like I said, pays for the lot rent, which is very affordable in Grand Rapids, but then the family also owns and builds equity within their home, which is a proven strategy to move people out of poverty. So this is basically Family Promise investing in the community and hoping to like build up like a whole class of people. So it takes about $20,000 to purchase and rehab one of these homes, and then 4 to 6 weeks time to remodel. So in the grand scheme of things, that's not super long. So hopefully this is a sustainable solution. Moving forward, Housing Next is another nonprofit in the area. They make building more affordable for developers. At their Felch Street flats in Holland, Housing Next developers use the pilot program, which stands for payment in lieu of taxes. At their Black River Flats development in Holland, Housing Next used the brownfield tax increment financing that is usually used for cleanup sites. So both very creative ways of using finances that the government provides as solutions to make developing apartment complexes more affordable and driving down rent costs. So HOM flats at Felch Street, they set unit rates at 40% to 100% of the average median income of the area. So people that are within that earning wage can go ahead and find a place that could be more affordable for them to live. And then Black River Flats in Holland, cap half of their units at 80% of less of the average median income. So moving along, this is a very full section, but Housing Now is a committee in Grand Rapids that partners with residents and developers to create housing choices for all. They make recommendations at city commission meetings, and as seen to the left, 10 recommendations have been approved by the city commission. So you will see that there are 11 total, but you can see that most of them all say approved next to them, except for recommendation number 5. So we'll talk about those that have already been approved. Number 1 is called the low income housing tax policy. So developers that offer affordable housing will pay a 1% service fee annually on their mortgage, but then they will contribute 2% more to the city's affordable housing fund. They can have the option to pay the 4% annual fee, but obviously that's more than the 3% they're going to be paying and the 2% that's going to be going towards the city's affordable housing fund in order to help more people. So recommendation number 2, home ownership incentives. So home buyer assistance fund was approved. So this means individuals can have up to $5,000 down payment assistance. People are eligible if their household makes 80% of less of the annual median income, and houses must be purchased within the community development general target area. But I do know that this is something that they are actually lobbying to change, to give buyers more choice, and that they don't actually just have to buy in the general target area. And I'll show that target area on the next slide. But the goal of this is to increase home ownership rates and housing choice, increase personal wealth over time, and reduce the number of vacant homes in the neighborhood. So this is the target area if you're familiar with the Grand Rapids area. So there's the outline of that in case you find that interesting. So next is incentives for small scale development, which has been approved. So this has been called the missing middle housing. So these are duplexes, fourplexes, bungalow courts, and mansion apartments that are smaller than a large house. So basically these are changes to zoning ordinances. So as you'll see, it's very wordy on the left, but the goal is to reduce the minimum dwelling unit width from 18 feet to 14 feet. So obviously if dwelling units are smaller, that means that we have space to build more. And then there are 2 bullets that are very similar. One says allow developers to build 2-family residential units. One says allow developers to build multi-family residential units in the LDR zone district. So I put at the bottom, the LDR stands for low density residential district. So these are areas that are traditionally single family homes. So the idea is that 2-family and multi-family developments will be available. And then these zones that look confusing to understand are really just areas that are for business or near transit or city center. So basically it's saying within 100 feet. So still close to a busier area, but technically a part of this lower density district. So next, an approved policy by Housing Next has been to change the NEZ policy, and NEZ stands for Neighborhood Enterprise Zones. So currently there are tax incentives for building new homes or repairing apartments in neighborhood enterprise zones, but it's not working as initially intended to increase affordable housing mobility and micro local business contracting. So the new goals have been to establish new baseline criteria, reduce the standard term of an NEZ exemption, and focus on high priority criteria and eliminate low priority criteria. So again, that makes sense because the high priority criteria are the affordable housing. So we want the most of that as possible. All right, so then next up, there has been an approved density bonus. So current density bonuses are for mixed income houses and cannot be applied to more traditional affordable housing projects. But this approval allowed for new requirements for eligibility. So development projects would be eligible for the affordable housing bonus if they are located within 300 feet of a transit line, create at least 20 units. Rental units have at least 30% of units that are at or below the average median income, or the annual median income, sorry. And then owner units also need to be 30% of units are at or below 80% of the annual median income. So rental units, you can see there is a little bit lower. So yeah, so that's all just to encourage, again, more people to build affordable units. And yeah, in order to include more people in that. And also I thought it was creative that they said one of the requirements is to be near a transit line, because that allows more people to get out into the community, get to work, shop at local businesses, etc. So also the property partnership policy. The goal of this is the city of Grand Rapids will partner with entities that manage and control properties to retain property interest. This is to create more diverse and affordable housing. So I found that one very interesting, that the city is actively partnering with developers in order to make sure that housing rates can stay relatively the same over time instead of seeing huge spikes. So like I mentioned earlier, we are now to the part where we are later in the presentation where we're talking about allowing accessory dwelling units. So to restate this definition, residential accessory dwelling units are residential spaces added to a primary residence. So the recommended changes are to allow ADUs by right in all zone districts. So by right just means there doesn't have to be a public hearing in order to build this. So they're going to remove the lot area requirement. So basically that means that you don't need as big of a lot as before. They're going to increase accessory building heights where an ADU is proposed. They're going to increase floor ratio from 25% to 40% of the primary structure, meaning the accessory dwelling unit doesn't have to be so small. And they're going to remove the maximum number of bedrooms and maximum number of occupants. So except that no more than 4 unrelated individuals can live in a single dwelling. So basically they're trying to make it so more people can have access to accessory dwelling units. And another solution has been non-condo zero lot line units, which sounds confusing, but these are just single family units that are attached in a row. There are amendments to encourage this development pattern. So these are now allowed in low density residential zones. So these are the areas, like I said earlier, that are normal single family houses. So then it removes minimum width of the residence and lot size, so they can be skinnier now, and they reduce the minimum lot area, so the amount of space that the house has to take up. So basically, again, this is more in less space, and there are disadvantages to this, and people that have arguments against this idea, but this is the current solution. So there is also a residential rental application ordinance. So application rental fees may only be charged for the amount that it takes to screen a resident. And this is for the city of Grand Rapids. So this makes it so that renters cannot be charged too high of fees, and then landlords make money off of them just off of the application. So residents receive refunds if they are denied for a reason that was not previously disclosed. So lastly, we have the Affordable Housing Fund. So this is the creation of a nonprofit called the City of Grand Rapids Affordable Housing Fund to create and preserve affordable housing. And here are some interesting infographics that I got from Housing Now. So a brief history of the Grand Rapids Affordable Housing Fund from 2015 to 2020. I'm just going to point out now the most interesting part, that Housing Next needs and opportunities report includes a target goal of $20 million fund by 2025. So that is very interesting, because Housing Next was also mentioned in this presentation. They're the ones that had the apartments that we talked about that were in Holland. So they're looking to use this housing fund to increase the funding for that nonprofit. And the 2020 housing needs assessment, this is very interesting. So about 25,000 households spend 30% or more of their income on housing, more so renters and homeowners. And about 13,000 households spend 50% or more of their income on housing. Again, renters is way higher. But we can also see that in the Grand Rapids area, many more white people are able to achieve home ownership rate. So hopefully some of these initiatives will be able to equal out this differential that is seen across races. And lastly, a new thing that I learned about Grand Rapids is that there is something called the Grand Rapids Alliance of Cooperative Communities. They prioritize community education in low-income households in Greater Grand Rapids. So they envision a thriving interconnected system of cooperatively owned housing in Grand Rapids, Michigan that prioritizes low-income households, fosters community, and empowers individuals. They're committed to improving and expanding opportunities for cooperative housing in the Grand Rapids area. So basically, this is many people living under a single roof. The Grand Rapids Alliance of Cooperative Communities currently owns 4 houses in the Grand Rapids area, and they're listed at the bottom. So the James Russell House, their Atlantis House, the Penrose House, and the Sparrow Family House. So as we can see here, the James Russell House has 21 single bedrooms. That's huge, and 3 large bedrooms. The Atlantis house has 9 single bedrooms, 4 large bedrooms. The Penrose house has 9 single, and the Sparrow Family House has actual units. So that's really interesting for families that are looking for affordable housing. They have 3 2-bedroom units and 1 1-bedroom unit. So this allows people to find affordable housing by basically having roommates in a cooperative housing agreement. And that is the end of my presentation. So I hope that brought some light on the fact that we don't have to solely depend on Section 8 and other government funded opportunities find affordable housing, and that nonprofits have found great success, and other companies too across the United States, in funding affordable housing so that we can have diverse and vibrant communities. So I hope you learned something.